Imagine two people commit the exact same crime. One is a Jew, the other is not. Under Torah law, the non-Jew may receive the death penalty, while the Jew may not. It actually depends on warnings. In this video, we'll look at what the Bible and the Talmud say about warnings and how they apply to each legal system. Why are they different? Are they fair? In Jewish law, a Jew can only receive capital punishment in a court if they were warned right before committing the crime. This means that witnesses must inform the potential transgressor, if you do that act, you will receive this penalty. At this point, if a Jew acknowledges the warning and then goes ahead and does the act in front of two witnesses, the Jewish court can now prosecute the person for capital punishment. The warning given right before he did the act proves that the act was deliberate and a knowing rebellion against God and the Torah. This requirement comes from the traditional interpretation of Deuteronomy 17 verse 6. The details of that derivation are for another time, but the point is this: a mid-act warning is essential. Only then can they be held liable, because only then is it proven that they knowingly defied God. However, for non-Jews it is different. The oral Torah, specifically Tractate Sanhedrin 57b, says regarding non-Jews that their warning is their liability. What does that mean? Let's take, for example, you shall not murder, one of the 10 commandments. For a Jew, God's command, his warning not to murder, is not enough to make them liable for a capital court case. Remember, a Jewish court still requires them to receive another warning right before they commit the act. For non-Jews, Tractate Sanhedrin says their warning is their liability, which means the original command, the original warning, is already enough to make a liability capital court case. Remember, this original command, this original warning, was when God gave the 7 Noahide commandments to Adam, and then to Noah, and then to Moses at Mount Sinai in front of the entire Jewish nation, which are to be eternal commands for all of mankind. So once a non-Jew has learned that the 7 laws are forbidden, which must happen in a Noahide society because the courts are obligated to educate the populace, then he doesn't get a second reminder. He doesn't get a mid-act warning. If he chooses to transgress, then the act itself is already enough to make him liable in a Noahide court. So now we can understand that essentially the words, their warning is their liability, means that the role that warning plays for Jews, willful rebellion, is played by the act itself by non-Jews. For example, we assume that if a non-Jew intentionally murders, and he knows that murder is prohibited under the Noahide code, then he willfully rebelled against society and God. But where's all this derived in the Bible? Well, it comes from a common place where God outlines the Noahide laws in Genesis 9 verse 5 and 6, where God is demanding accountability from murderers. He says, "In your blood of your lives I will require. From the hand of every animal I will require it. And from the hand of man, even from the hand of every man's brother, I will demand the life of man. Whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed." In another video, we covered that the phrase, "and the blood of your lives I will require," means that the verdict of even one judge is sufficient for a capital court case. The sages then teach that the phrase, "from the hand of every animal," means that a non-Jew does not need prior warning before receiving punishment. Just as an animal does not give a warning before it kills, so too, a court does not need to require a warning before putting a person to death. Now obviously the warning here is referring to the second warning that Jews are required to give. The first warning is in the Torah, and the courts are obligated to educate the populace on this first warning. After this education, though, there need not be another warning, just like how an animal does not give a warning before it kills. And in case you have any doubts about this Genesis 9 verse 5 derivation, right after Genesis 9 verse 6 adds, "Whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed." We know that this verse means that there must be capital punishment for murderers, but notice what it doesn't say. It doesn't say that the person needs to have a warning before their blood is shed. It doesn't say, whoever's about to shed the blood of man and then receives a warning and then sheds the blood of man, his blood shall be shed. No, it just says, whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed. No warning necessary. So all in all, we see that once a non-Jew understands the Noahide laws, he does not need to receive another warning. Now I already hear people objecting, "That's not fair. Why do Jews get an extra warning and not us non-Jews?" First, Jews are bound by 613 commandments. And these commandments aren't just the moral basics like do not murder and do not steal. These 613 commandments contain many ritual laws, many complexities, many laws that don't have obvious reasons. It's so much easier for a Jew to break one of them accidentally. That's in part why the Torah requires witnesses to stop him right before he does the act, to make sure that he's actually doing the act out of willful rebellion. Non-Jews, by contrast, are only bound by 7 broad, universal, relatively obvious laws. They're simple and they're essentially a part of our innate, intrinsic moral architecture. These are pretty difficult laws to break without intention, especially when you know the Noahide laws. Thus, it doesn't really make as much sense to have a warning for these laws. And if this still seems unfair to you, remember, you can always convert to become a Jew. You can always accept more responsibility so that you can have this extra warning. But this isn't necessary. Remember, in a Noahide society, the courts are obligated to educate. And they're also obligated to set up safeguards to make it so that people don't transgress those 7 Noahide laws, to make it almost impossible to do so. But let's now summarize. We saw how in the verses describing punishment for non-Jews, from the hand of every animal means that non-Jews do not require a second warning, just like how an animal does not give a warning before it kills. For non-Jews, their warning is their liability. The role that warning plays for the Jews is played by the act itself by non-Jews. The Noahide laws, though, are the basic foundation of civilization. It does not need an extra warning. In fact, I'm not really aware of any society that requires an extra warning. But on this channel, we delve into all the Noahide laws, which are God's laws of humanity and will be the laws of the future. So subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on any future videos. This was on warnings for non-Jews. Thank you, as always, for watching.